So with the Pythagorean theorem, you have this formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And the sides doesn't really matter what's labeled A, B, or C, except for it does matter for the C, sorry. So it doesn't matter what's labeled for A and B. C always has to be your hypotenuse. What does hypotenuse mean? All right, what does hypotenuse mean?
It's the longest side of a isosceles triangle.
The longest side of a right triangle. Or really it could be the longest side of any triangle. Just remember that your hypotenuse is C, and that has to be your longest side. All right, so what's the value of the longest side here? 2. All right, so C has to equal 2. A and B, you could put this as A, you could put this side as A, these can be interchanged. All right, the A we can just call as this side, and we can call this side as B. All right, notice we don't have a length for B, that's what we're solving for with the Pythagorean theorem. So plug it into the Pythagorean theorem formula. We have a squared. All right, so that's my a value is the square root of 3 plus b squared, which we do not know the value of b, that's why it's still b, equal to c squared. All right, so you don't want to just put the square root of 3 in your calculator and make it a decimal because that wouldn't be exact. So that's why I left it like this. But what happens when I have a square root symbol and a to the power of 2 at the same time? Good. So these cancel each other out. All right, if I had the square root of 9, for example, and then I squared it at the end, I would just end up with 9. And that's true for any number. All right, the square root of 9 is 3, 3 squared is 9. So over here, I just have 3 for that. B squared is still unknown. What's 2 squared?
4.
4. All right, now we're solving for B. So now that we simplified what we could, we want to solve for B. You want to get rid of the numbers that are farthest from the B, on the same side of the equal sign, but farther from the B. Would I get rid of the 3 or the 2 first? The 3, right? The 3 is separated by this plus sign, so I'm going to get rid of that 3 first. How can I make the 3 equal 0?
By subtracting 3.
Good. I subtract 3, so that's how I get the 3 to be 0, 3 minus 3. And then what I do on one side, good. So on the left side, I have b squared. On the right side, 4 minus 3 is 1. Almost there. Now we just have to get rid of that to the power of 2. So what's opposite of raising something to the power of 2? So square root it, that'll cancel this out. And again, what you do on one side, you have to do to the other. What's the square root of 1?
1.
It is 1. All right, so if you can put that in your calculator, you can just remember that square root is telling you to find the number that multiplies to get that number. I think the calculator will be easier. If you don't know how to find that square root button on your calculator, let me know and I'll show you. All right, questions on this one? All right, so don't let those square root symbols, also called radical you. All right. You know, those aren't as hard as they seem. All right. So the next one is a word problem. It's a you try, but I know like sometimes you guys see a bunch of words and you get overwhelmed. All right, so I'll just kind of help you pull out the important information. We have the center of the Great Pyramid of Giza contains different chambers used by the ancient Egyptians, so real world example or real life triangle. Using the dimensions of other parts of the pyramid, you can determine how far you would have to walk from the outside to the center. The height of the pyramid from the very top to the center of the bottom. So from the very top to the center of the bottom at a 90-degree angle, so that means it's a right triangle, which is what we use the Pythagorean theorem for, is 262 meters. Right, so you want to pull out the important information. This side is 262 meters. The slant height, when I say slant height, what side am I talking about?
It's your hypotenuse.
My hypotenuse. All right, this height, which happens to be my longest height. So make sure you're putting the numbers in the correct spot. The slant height or distance of the slanted side of the pyramid, which is the hypotenuse, you can see right there, is approximately 440 meters. So we are solving for this missing side, which would be labeled as B in this one, because it says this is A, this is C. So we're solving for B, right? So when you see a word problem on your quiz or on your practice, pull out the important information, usually any numbers and any descriptions of what side it's on will be your indicator. Questions on that part? All right, so then now that we kind of set it up, go from there. All right, take a minute and solve for that missing side using the Pythagorean theorem. So we have our formula here. Let's plug in what we are given. So we have the 262 for the a squared. B squared is unknown, so B is going to stay B, and the C is 440. Simplify what you can. So 262 squared, you probably needed your calculator for that. So 262 with that little carrot looking button squared on your calculator. When I entered that, I got 68,644. Right? Everyone with me so far? You can double check it on your own calculator. And then 440 squared, I got 193,600. All right, bigger numbers, but still the same process. Now I can solve for B. So am I gonna subtract this large number first, or am I gonna take the square root first? Good, you wanna start with what's farther away. This 2 is right on top of the B, so that wouldn't be the first thing you calculate. So subtract 68,644 on each side. Cancels out on the left side. We have B squared. On the right, I have 124,956. All right, now one more step. what's opposite of raising something to the power of 2? Square rooting. So what you do on one side, you do the other. Over here, this cancels out. That's why we did that, so that it would cancel out. And then you're going to take the square root of 124, 956. And when I did that, so the decimal answer is the most preferred answer, even though it's not exact. So it's approximately 353.5 meters. It also does say round your answer to the nearest 10. So that should have given you the decimal answer. All right, if you didn't get this same answer, then you know why you got it wrong. I got 4.756 for your final answer.
Yeah, when I put it in the calculator.
Did you put this number in the calculator for the square root? So kind of looks like this. I'm not sure. But it should be second, and then this line because there's something on top. 124, 956. It should look like that. Okay, enter. And then when you hit enter, do you get that number? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have the same issue? All right, I would hate for you to miss points just because the calculator has a user error on it. All right, so don't let that happen. All right, questions before we move on to something a little bit different? All right, so that's for Pythagorean theorem. Now we're going to talk about perimeter and area. All right, so a couple definitions if you want to highlight along with me. Perimeter of any figure is just the sum of all the side lengths. All right, so perimeter is just the distance around the figure. Whether it has 10 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, you're just adding up the side lengths. If you know the length of each side, you can add them together, or you can probably use things like the distance formula to figure out the length of each side. Perimeter is measured in units, so make sure your answers have units. So like centimeters, meters, kilometers, it'll tell you what units. If it doesn't tell you the units, just write units. It is important to use proper units in geometry. So if you are told to find the length of something, and maybe it tells you 4 inches here, 4 inches here, 2 inches, 2 inches, but your answer options are in feet or something like that, centimeters even, you would need to convert it. All right, so you only add things up if they're in the same unit. If maybe it gave you one, like these 2 sides in inches, but it gave you this side in centimeters, you can't just add them because they're not the same units. You have to convert them. If you have problems converting, I can help you with that, but just make sure they are in the same units. The measurements will never be negative. I can never measure something and have a negative length, right? So make sure if your answer is negative, something went wrong somewhere. Maybe you pressed the wrong button. Questions about that? All right, so the measure or the highlighting part, make sure each dimension is measured in the same type of unit, and then they are never negative. All right. I think we're looking mostly at squares and rectangles today. So you could just remember perimeter is all side lengths added together. Right, that's usually what I remember because it's less things to remember. But since we know things about squares, for example, what's unique about squares? Each side is the same. So if I measure it as S on each side, I could do perimeter equals S plus S plus S plus S, or what's like a shorthand of that?
S
Not to the power of 4, but times 4, right? Because multiplication is just adding the same thing a bunch of times. So if you want to do that for squares, probably a little easier. For things like rectangles, what do we know about rectangles? Good. So you have maybe 2 different lengths, and like the ones that are parallel to each other will have the same length. So if this is my length, the same length will be over here. If this is my width, the same width will be over here. So I could do my perimeter as length plus width plus width. Or the shorthand of that would be 2 plus 2. Exactly. All right, so that way you can do like the algebra to solve for the missing side or whatever in those formulas. Makes sense? Any questions? All right. So looking on the next page for example 1, I'm just kind of reading it out while people might still be writing this one. But example 1 says that the side of a square is represented by 3x minus 1 feet. The perimeter of the square is 80 feet. Find the value of x. All right, so pull out your important information. The fact that it's a square tells me what? Good. Each side is the same length, and there's 4 sides. So I can use that shorthand formula like this instead of doing like adding 3x and so on. So the side is represented as this. So usually anytime there's numbers or symbols, that's important information. So make sure you put that. So it's telling me that S is going to equal 3x minus 1. So I replaced it here for the S. Notice whenever I plug stuff in, I put it in parentheses. All right, so this has to be multiplied by. What else is important in this problem? Good. It tells me what the perimeter equals. And since it tells me that the perimeter, that the P is 80 feet, I can solve for x. Right? I can't have 2 variables and be able to solve. I need to have it just 1 variable to be able to solve it. Questions about that? All right, so think back to algebra. What would be the first step in solving for x? Good. Anytime you see numbers in this setup where there's a number outside parentheses like this, you'll want to distribute it first. So 4 times 3x is 12. Good. And 4 times negative 1 is 1. Good. Bring this 80 down. We haven't done anything to that yet. Next, start isolating the x. So do I get rid of the 12 first or the minus 4 first? what's farthest away. So since this is right next to it, you're going to want to get rid of the -4 first. Opposite of -4 is good. So add 4 on each side. This cancels out. Left side is 84, right?
Oh,
Are you going a little bit ahead?
no, I was on.
Oh, okay. So 84, and then on the right side is 12x. Opposite of multiplying by 12 would be good, what you do on one side. And what is 84 divided by 12?
7.
All right, good. And we should have units for this. What units? Good. So the value of x is 7 feet. Make sure when you are answering these that you're answering the question asked. So this one just wants the value of x. If it said like what are the dimensions, that would be different. So it would say what does the size equal, and you would plug in the number. But it just wants the value that's there. Questions? All right, example 2 is a you try, but I'll help you set it up. So the perimeter of a regular polygon is 48 yards. How many sides does it have? Each side measures 6 yards. All right, so it doesn't tell us what shape we're working with, but we know that perimeter is all the sides added together, right? Now pick out the important information. It says that the perimeter is 48. So I'm going to put that where the P goes. So P is 48. We don't know the number of sides that it has. So that would be my unknown. We can probably label that as S. But each side measures 6 yards. So each side is equal, right? We just don't know how many it takes to get to 48. So what would go on the right side in algebra? So 6 is part of it. Good. 6x or 6s. I'll use s since that's what we have up here. But yeah, if they're all measure the same side, and we don't know how many sides it has, we would set it up like this because we know the perimeter is 48 yards. So if we divide 6 on each side, that's opposite of multiplying by 6. How many sides do I have? Eight.
Couldn't you have gotten it to like this? Well, I did it this way,
You
I
could.
just got.
You could do like a guess and check method. It's just sometimes the numbers aren't as easy as this, right? So if this was like a different set of numbers, maybe this was like 1078, and I don't know, it would be a lot harder to add up to that. But yeah, this is how you can set it up, or you can just try things out and get to 48 yards. All right, questions about that? So there's 8 sides. What kind of shape is that?
That's not.
Good. I don't know how to spell octagon right now. octagons or octagon. I don't know. All right, but it's an octagon. Questions, comments? All right. There's a few more examples. Sorry if it's getting a little, this one's a long lesson. So next example. We have a rectangle. Length is 2x plus 5 inches, and the width is x minus 1 inches. If the perimeter is 80 inches, what are the dimensions of this rectangle? So I would probably draw it out. It says my length is 2x plus 5, and the width is x minus 1. The perimeter is 80 inches low. And we want to know the dimensions of this rectangle. What does that mean when it says like dimensions? What's it really asking for?
It's asking for the length of both sides.
Good, so it's asking for like what does the length equal and what does the width equal? Not just that it equals x minus 1. We want like the exact number. So in order to do that, I need to know what x is. And I can solve for x using the formula for perimeter. Since we are dealing with a rectangle, we can use that shorthand one that we learned. So what's the perimeter formula for rectangles?
2L plus 2W.
Good. And if you didn't know that, you get to use your notes during the quiz so you can look at it. All right, 2L plus 2W. All right, so if I plug in what I know for the length and the width, also what I know for the perimeter, then my setup looks something like this. So the length is 2x plus 5, and we said the width is x minus 1. And solving for x, what do I do first? Good, always distribute first if that is set up that way, all right? So on the left side, we didn't do anything to it, so just kind of bring it down. On the right side, multiply the outside number by the inside numbers. What's 2 times 2x? 4x. 2 times 5. And then now onto the second set of parentheses. What's 2 times x? 2x. And 2 times negative 1. 2. Positive or negative? Negative. Good. All right. Before I can isolate the x, I need to combine like terms. So what are some like terms that I can combine? 4x and 2x. They combine to be good. And then 10 minus 2 is 8. And it's positive, so I'm going to put plus 8. All right, make sure we get rid of what's farthest from the x first. So are we getting rid of the 6 or the 8 first? What's farthest from x? Good, and opposite of adding 8 is good. On the left side, 80 minus 8 is 72. Equal to 6x. Opposite of multiplying by 6 is to divide by 6. All right, what you do on one side, you have to do to the other. 72 divided by 6 is 12. So that's what x equals. Does that answer the question that I was asked? Did it say just to find the value of x?
Is it different place?
It said find the dimension, so I need to find what the length actually is and what the width actually is. So if I plug in this x value into x for both of them, I can figure that out. So my width is x minus 1, which makes it 12 minus 1. What's my width? 12 minus 1 is 11, and the units are inches. 11 inches for the width. On your paper, plug it into the length, and then I'll ask you at the same time. All right, so plug in 12 into x for the length. You get 2 times 12, which is 24 plus 5, which is 29 inches. 29 inches for the length. Questions, comments, does that make sense? All right. Sorry, I'm just waiting for people to finish writing. All right, on the next page, example 4, question mark. Can you wait till 9:20? So then on the next page, we have a blue rectangle representing a pool shown with a width of 15 feet and a length of 30 feet. Normally, if you don't have a picture, you would draw it in, but it's showing you this is the pool, measures 15 feet here and 30 feet here. The larger rectangle around the pool represents the deck, and it's showing you that it is 5 feet away from every side. So from this measurement here is 5 feet, and then also this measurement here is 5 feet. So that makes the entire pool, if you're including the deck, it takes up 25 feet for the width and 40 feet for the length, right? It's 15 plus 5 feet here, plus another 5 feet here. Equals 25. 30 plus 5 feet here, 5 feet here makes that 40. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm building a fence around the pool deck. So where in the picture would it be around the pool deck? Would it be around the blue rectangle or the white rectangle? The white rectangle, right? Because the deck ends here. So even though it gives us all this information, we just want to know how much fencing we need for this outside rectangle. So don't get confused. All right, what could I do to figure that out? There's a few different things you could do, some easier than others.
25 times 2 is 40.
25 times 2 plus 40 times 2. All right, that matches for a rectangle, right? 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. So I would do that. You could do 25 plus 25 plus 40 plus 40. It'll give you the same thing. 25 times 2 is 50. 40 times 2 is 50 plus 80 is
120.
130, what unit are we working with? Feet. And this is all in feet, so that makes sense. You don't have to do any conversion. All right, questions? All right, so people always really hate those ones because they think it's a lot harder than it actually is with those pictures. Just make sure you're reading it closely, what it's actually asking for. Sometimes it gives you extra information that you don't care about. All right, so the next page is titled Applications with Perimeter. So if the side lengths are labeled or a figure is on a grid and the sides lie on the lines of the grid, there is not much to do for the perimeter but add the lengths of the sides together. But what if the sides were not labeled and you could not easily figure out the length? So that's when you'll have to use the distance formula. So think of it like on a coordinate plane, right? Sometimes you just have a box labeled like this, and there's no lengths at all. You just have A, B, C, and D. And you have to figure out what those X, Y values are for each one, and then do the distance formula for each one. All right, I know that's like a little tedious, but that's what you're doing to find the perimeters. You're finding the distance from each point to each other. So over here is your distance formula. If I needed to find like the distance from point A to point B, or like this side length, then I would label one of these points as x1, y1, and the other as x2, y2, and plug it into here. All right, it doesn't matter which one you label as x1 or y1, like you can do B as your x1, y1, you just have to label it first, then plug it in. All right, make sure you guys are practicing with your calculators. So on this next example, we have to find the perimeter of this triangle. So we need to find each side length, and we have to use a distance formula for that. So distance formula, x2 minus x1 in parentheses squared plus y2 minus y1 in parentheses squared. All right, from A to B, we'll find that side length first. All right, so we need to first know what point A is. So what's the values for point A?
-3.
Good, so those x comma y, so -3, 2. And the comma in between. What's the point for B?
2,5.
2, 5. And while we're at it, what's the point for C? Good. So we're just doing from A to B right now. So just pick one of them to be x1, y1, and the other to be x2, y2. All right, so draw your formula just like that's how it looks up here. Parentheses x2, which we said is 2. Yes. Okay, no, you're fine. So distance x2 we said is 2. 2 there. minus x1, which is a -3. I know I could probably clean this up a little bit, but I'm not going to. I'm going to put it all in my calculator at the same time. Then I have y2, so 5 minus y1, so -2, parentheses squared. All right, and practice with that TI-84 that you have. All right, I would put it in all at once. I wouldn't even try simplifying it first. So put second and then x squared, so you get that square root symbol. You have buttons for the parentheses. 2 minus -3. Do you guys know how to put negative numbers in your calculator? You can't put just subtraction. It has to be this little button down here that's next to the decimal. So it's parentheses 2 minus -3 squared plus parentheses 5 minus 2 squared. If you entered it in your calculator correctly, you should have gotten each decimal. And that decimal is approximately 5.83. All right, so everyone needs to be trying it out in the calculator. If you're not getting 5.83, just call me over. I'll show you what I forgot or put in wrong or whatever. Questions about that?
What do we do with the equation doesn't specify what measurement is?
Like units?
Yeah.
Then like I would get my final answer. If it added up to 10, I would say 10 units. Like I would just write UNITS. All right. So now that we've done that, find the measurements from B to C using the distance formula. And then also find it from A to C. All right, so do that on your own paper, write it out, get the answer. Once you think you have the answer, call me over, I'll look at it, and then I'll let you take a break early. All right, I'll kind of release you all at 9:20 anyway. So you can take like a 10-minute break, but if you have the answer, I can check it and you can go on the break. Okay.
that's like one of them. Once.
All right, so from B to C, we have the distance formula could look like this. So -2 squared plus 0 minus 5 squared. All right, if you had it as 5 minus 0, like this is flop, that's fine. Get it 2 minus 0, that's fine. But then your approximate answer should have been about 5.4 or like 5.38. And then from A to C, here's what your formula should have looked like. We have 0 minus -3, or if you had -3 minus 0, that's fine too. Or you would have had 0 minus 2, or if you put 2 minus 0, that's fine too. All right, but if you labeled one of them as x1, y1, and the other as x2, y2, you have to keep it the same for both. Like I can't have this be -3 plus or minus 0 and this be 0 minus 2. It wouldn't work that way. All right, but here's one way you could have written it. And that would give you the approximate answer of 3.6. All right, I'll release you now for break. I'll have you come back around like 9:31. But if you are still having trouble with your calculator, you can't get those numbers even after putting it in that setup, then let me know. All right, so let's see if you got a good start. And there are like some acceptable variations, but there are some acceptable variations, but for the most part, it should look like this. So from A to B, when I put it in the formula, I decided to put it in like this. You could have had 0 minus -3 and then 5 minus 2. But no matter how you entered it for your formula at this point, you should have gotten a decimal close to 4.2 if you did it correctly. Right? If you didn't, I can come look at it. What did you say? Okay. So then for BC, you should have gotten 5. All right, that one was a whole number. So no matter how you entered it here, if you entered it the right way, you should have gotten 5. From C to D, you should have gotten about 5.4. So it might be a little bit different. I think I saw like 5.38. I really don't remember. But rounded to the 10 would be 5.4 if you did it the right way. Same with the D to A. If you did it the right way, you should have gotten about 3.2. Not too much far off. Rounded to the 10 would be about 3.2. Make sense about that? And then perimeters where you add up all the sides. So that's what I showed down here. Here's all my side lengths that I use the distance formula to figure out. Add it all together, your answer should be close to 17.8. So if you had like 17.78, that works, but it's rounds to 17.8. If you rounded it to 18, I suppose that's fine. Usually 1 decimal point after is the best. Questions? Yeah. Okay, so the coordinate for A was, and then the coordinate for B was good. Which one did you make your X1, Y1? Okay. And then I'll make this one X2, Y2. So if you did it this way, then it should look like this for when you enter it. Did you put a subtraction sign here?
Yeah.
So that's a good thing that you brought up. This calculator doesn't read subtraction signs for negative numbers. It will read it as like a syntax error, put something in the wrong way. You have to press this button down here. It's next to the decimal button. It's like a minus, but in parentheses. That's what you need to put. Okay. So for negatives, put that button that's next to the decimal. So should be that white button, 3, then the subtraction button, the gray button, and then the white button again for the negative 2. Make sense? All right. Questions before we move on? All right. So next part, we're going to talk about area. So a little bit different, moving on from perimeter where you add up all the sides. All right, so area, review, and the formulas. The area of a polygon is a space inside the boundary of an object. So triangles, rectangles, it's how much, I don't know how to describe it other than the word area, how much is actually going inside the shape. So if you have like a garden, how much dirt do you need to buy, or how many turf squares do you need to buy? That's what's filling out the shape. And it's measured in units squared, or square units. So if it's like 2 feet by 3 feet for a rectangle, 2 feet by 3 feet is what I said. Once I get my answer, it would be feet squared. All right, so it's a square foot that goes inside. Now, the formula for area depends on the shape. So it's going to be different for pretty much every shape. Like triangles, since 2 triangles make up a rectangle, we're doing half of the base times height. Right? So normally, like if you do 2 triangles together, you do base times height. But since it's just 1 triangle, you're doing half of that. Rectangles are going to be length times width, or base times height. Parallelograms, those things that have 4 sides, will be base times height. Questions about these formulas? All right, I'd probably star or highlight these so I can find them easily when I take my quiz. All right. So then, example 1, find the area of a rectangle with the following vertices. So it already labeled them for us. And since the area of a rectangle, what's the formula for area of a rectangle? Length times width. I really just need to find like 2 side lengths, right? Can I find just these 2 side lengths and multiply them together?
No.
No, right? Because rectangles have it where like the parallel lines are the same length. So I need to find two sides that are adjacent to each other or like right next to each other. So like I could find this one and this one and call it a day. Multiply them together. You could have done maybe this one and that one. Make sense? So an unlined perimeter, you only have to find two lengths. So do that. The way I have it set up, I would need to find the from C to D.
So what do you do this?
Yes, you would do distance formula again. Good thing to point out that I forgot to mention, yes. So the way I have it set up, I would find it from C to D using distance formula and from C to F using distance formula. I'll write that formula up here for your reference, but you do also have it in your notes. Right, so I'll give you about a minute or two to find those lengths, and then we'll continue with this formula. We'll do the multiplying together at the same time. All right, so practice using the distance formula. Practice using your calculator. What did you get for the length from C to D?
5.
Hold on, I lost my spot. From C to D, you got 5. Anyone get something different? All right, what about from C to F? 5. All right, that is correct. So if you plugged it into your formula and you did not get 5, and it should not be a decimal this time, then pay close attention. So if I'm using the coordinates that they already found for us up here, I will label C as my x1, y1, and B as my x2, y2. And just plugging it in so it looks just like that formula. So x2 is 3, x1 is -1 squared, plus y2, which is 4, minus y1, which is 1. All right, if you had it where this is x2, y2, and that's x1, y1, just switch those positions. And then I put it in my calculator all at once, make it easy on myself. D equals 5 exactly. For C to F, it should have looked like this. I'll keep C as my x1, y1. We'll make F x2, y2. X2 is 2 minus x1, which is -1. Y2 is -3 minus y1, which is 1. So it should have looked something like that. But no matter which one you made x2, y2, which one you made x1, y1, if you did it right, you would have gotten 5 for that. Make sense? So that doesn't answer the question asked. It says find the area. So we need to plug in our length, which is 5, and our width, which is 5, into this formula. So area equals 5 times 5. What does the area equal? 25, and it doesn't give us any units, huh? 25 units squared. Or 25 square units of the same thing. All right. What do you mean?
Like, you want us to go one of these.
No, because I'm not saying that the area is 25 squared. I'm saying that in this box, I have 25 boxes. I have 25 boxes in here that are 1 foot by 1 foot. Does that make sense? So like the square on the grid, there's 25 of them that fit. All right, good question. Any other questions? All right. Next one, you guys can try. I'll just help you with the formula part because it is a triangle. So triangles have a different formula for the area. What formula is for a triangle? Good, 1/2 base times height. There's in another math class, they said base times height divided by 2, that's the same thing. All right, so calculate the area of triangle ABC with altitude CD. So this is showing you the height right here, given these vertices. So base would be what side?
EA.
Good. This whole side right here is your base. The height is represented by what line? D to C. Good. So I would need to find the distance from C to B and also from A to B, and then plug it into that formula. All right. So do that, find the distance. I'll put the formula up here. We're a little bit behind schedule, but I think we'll catch up next week. Just FYI. From C to D, you should have had a distance of, anyone get it? 5. Good, exactly 5. Not a decimal.
Yeah.
And then from A to B, you should have gotten a distance of 108. I did not get 100. Does someone get something else? All right, let's see. Maybe I did it wrong. We'll see. So A would be A would be the coordinate. We'll make that x1, y1. B can be our x2, y2. So plugging it in, you should have gotten 8 minus -4 plus 7 minus -2 squared. And then when I enter that into my calculator, you get 15. Good. All right. So that means my base is 15. My height is 5. So plugging it into the area for formula, or not for formula, the formula for area of a triangle, we get 1/2 . times 15 times 5, which equals something, which equals 37.5 units squared. All right, questions, comments?